He is coming. Cover your butt.
Political horseshoe theory asserts that the far left and the far right are not actually in opposition, but closely resemble one another. Nothing is a clearer example of this than the anti-SJW versus SJW debate.
Good evening, everybody. This is Aspie, and you're watching the Incredible Aspie. Now, anybody who has known me for a while knows that I like to sing. And where I got my love for singing came from nowhere else but the choir. I sang in choirs for all 4 years of high school, and I currently perform in multiple vocal ensembles in college. Choir is obviously something that is very close to my heart. So when I see this beautiful art being trashed by SJW nonsense, it pisses me off to no end.
It is always infuriating when people who are not familiar with your passions start to meddle with it. This has also happened in the past when SJWs criticize subjects which they are not familiar with. In the past, there has been an outcry about Spider-Woman not being drawn in a realistic fashion. At the core of the complaint was that a fictional character wasn't realistic enough. There is no baseline to how realistic a made-up character has to be. This was a petty and superficial complaint. In order to combat these petty and superficial complaints, many in the anti-SJW group have decided to start complaining about petty and superficial nonsense, and the Incredible Aspie is no different.
Talk about this
Yeah, that clapping isn't creepy at all. What is this, 1984?
Rhythmic clapping during a musical performance is somehow considered creepy now. But not just that. Rhythmic clapping is somehow also similar to a book about a dystopian society. Talk about hyperbole. Let's start with this petty complaint that rhythmic clapping during a musical performance is somehow creepy. For someone who started off talking about how significant choir is to them, you seem to have forgotten how often rhythmic clapping happens during choir performances, especially gospel choir. This is a petty complaint. Second, how is this anything like 1984? I'm serious, where are the similarities between a dystopian society that controls its citizens by creating a facade of free will and rhythmic clapping? I get the feeling that you haven't actually read the book, but since calling things that you don't agree with Orwellian is the new trend among the anti-SJW, might as well call it Orwellian, even if you don't know how it's Orwellian. What's next? Musicals are fascist propaganda? I can only imagine what you think of jazz hands.
under my feet, under my feet, under my feet, under my feet.
A little violent, wouldn't you say? This actually kind of reminds me of something.
It's a metaphor. I feel like I shouldn't have to explain what a metaphor is, but yet, here we are. These women aren't literally stomping on anyone. This is a petty attack on the same level as people complaining about an over-sexualized Spider-Woman. No one is actually being hurt by this metaphor. You are actually going out of your way to get offended by a metaphor. And what is with this comparison to Soviet Russia? A song about the masses taking power back from the rich and powerful is somehow comparable to Soviet Russia. If you're going to complain about something, at the very least, bother to make your complaints make sense.
Well, I went down to the jailhouse and I took back what they stole from me.
Now this actually makes me angry. You don't just get thrown into prison for nothing. And I also don't think women should be complaining about prison. After all, women do get shorter prison sentences than men for the exact same crime. So on this issue, I would advise you to hold your tongue.
Did you really just tell these women to check their privilege? An anti-SJW just told someone to check their privilege. I know you don't think that you did that, but that is exactly what just happened. These women aren't wrong because they presented a terrible argument. They aren't wrong because their ideas aren't backed up by sound research. No. These women are wrong because they are privileged. You are telling these women that they can't complain about a social issue solely based on their gender. The most annoying tactic used by SJWs to shut down arguments, and an anti-SJW is using it without even batting an eye. This is a beautiful example of the horseshoe effect, where the people at the extremes of political views are at the core no different from each other. You engage in the same tactics, you make petty complaints, and use silent dissent not based on merit, but rather on gender. How is this any different from people telling you that you are mansplaining or that you need to check your privilege? It's not. And finally, to put a cherry on top of this petty complaint pie, we have this lovely comment.
Ain't gonna let the system walk all over me.
Hey, good for her. That's the most exercise that she has gotten all year.
Yup, we have devolved into making fun of fat people. Haha, isn't it funny that that person is fat? How old are you? 13? Once again, the anti-SJWs have shown themselves to be nothing more than a mirror of their counterparts, engaging in petty attacks rather than actually trying to address real social issues, all the while pretending they have the moral high ground and making sure that you can't speak out because you are privileged.